Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Kev's Movie Corner. I am Kev, and this week we are talking about Unforgiven. This movie came out in 1992. It stars Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, and Morgan Freeman as your three main characters. Quick snippet from IMDb says an retired Old West gunslinger, Will Munny, gonna go with Munny, reluctantly takes one last job to avenge an injustice with the help of his old partner and a newer outlaw known simply as the Schofield Kid. So this is a Western. If the gunslinger, outlaw, Clint Eastwood whole thing didn't all give that away. It's right at a little bit over 2 hours. 2 hours and 10 minutes, I believe, long. But it was a very good movie. I enjoyed this movie a lot. And I'm not generally a Western fan. But anyway, this starts out with a little text kind of scrolling across the screen talking about it kind of talks about Clint Eastwood's character Will and his wife, but it talks about his wife from the perspective of her mother and the fact that she didn't understand why she married an outlaw, a murderer, a criminal, and then it goes and says that she had died from smallpox, I believe is what it says. Which you have that, which is just a brief little thing. It's very short. It's just text scrolling across the screen for maybe 30 seconds, and then it cuts to a town in Wyoming called Big Whiskey. 2 years later, after after she supposedly died, or after it says she has died, and it cuts to a whorehouse, prostitutes, or a bar which had prostitutes above it, living above it, whatever, working above it, however you want to say that, and one of the patrons, I guess, if you want to call him that, gets angry with one of the ladies and starts cutting her face with a knife. And they eventually pull a couple other people, a couple of the other women, and a couple other guys pull him off of her, and they tie him up and the person that he's there with, and they call in the sheriff, the local law enforcement, and they decide. The sheriff comes in. He talks to the women. They say that they think he needs to be punished severely. And the sheriff goes downstairs, talks to him, and he ends up not really doing anything. He orders the two to hand over some horses to the owner of the bar where the prostitutes work for lost wages. Nothing, no justice for the prostitutes, no justice for the woman, nothing like that, which the women are very mad at. Obviously, they're very upset about. They think they need to be whipped. At least, they were even mad that when the sheriff was just going to whip them, he decides not to even do that. They really wanted him hanged for what he did, but that doesn't happen. And they end up pooling their money and putting out a bounty of $1,000 for these two men to be a bounty on them for $1,000. Bounty on these two cowboys. Again, then we cut back to the little house that is shown in the very beginning with the text scrolling on the screen, which is where Clint Eastwood Will now lives with his two children, a little pig farm out in the middle of nowhere. He is terrible as a pig farmer. His kids are not. His kids are. I mean, they're little kids. He's raising them by himself because his wife has died. But while he's trying to deal with pigs, this young whippersnapper, I guess, whatever you want to call him, the Schofield kid, new young outlaw, comes riding up and asks him if he is who he says he is, if he's really a cold-blooded killer, who he claims, who he's supposed to be, because he's heard about him, and he needs help going after this bounty. Will turns him away, says, "I don't do that anymore. My wife got me out of that. She got me out of drinking. She got me out of all that bad stuff. I don't do any of that anymore." And the kid ends up leaving by himself. He says, if you change your mind, I'll be riding this way, and you can come help, and we'll split the bounty." Will ends up thinking about it, and he goes off. He leaves the kids, tells them where to go if they need help, and tells his son to watch his sister and who to go to if he needs help or anything, and says he'll be back in a couple weeks. And he rides off to go help with this bounty. But before he goes to meet up with the Schofield kid, who is actually played by James Woolvett. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce that name. Jaimz Woolvett. Wollvetett. Interesting. That's the other one of the other kids in this movie, but he's in it an okay amount, but he's kind of not he's not one of the main characters. Before he goes to catch up with him, he goes to get his friend and former partner, Ned, who is played by Morgan Freeman, to go also help with this bounty, because Will says that he doesn't do anything without Ned. Ned won't do anything without Will either. So he convinces Ned to go. They both ride off. Eventually, they meet up with the Schofield kid, who they find by him shooting at them in the middle of a field, in all directions. And shortly after this, they realize that he's basically blind. He can't see anything more than like 25, 30 feet away. He says 50 yards, but that's kind of just what he says. But he just shoots randomly. He can't see where any of them are. Can't see where anybody is from 100 feet or whatever. So that becomes a problem. They're questioning whether this is actually going to work or not. So they all ride up to Wyoming together. While that is going on, while they're doing that, you also have scenes from Big Whiskey. There is another bounty hunter who has entered town, named English Bob, who is played by Richard Harris, a British-born man who is kind of uppity the whole time. He is kind of dogging Americans while he's coming into town. And you quickly learn that he is a rival of the sheriff in town named Little Bill. The town after learning about the bounty on these two cowboys has put a ordinance in saying there will be no firearms or they must be surrendered to the authorities. And when they notice that English Bob has firearms, they all surround him and they take his firearms, they take his guns, and Little Bill kicks the ever-living bleep out of him on the ground, beats him to within pretty bad. And then English Bob also has a writer who's following him around who's kind of fascinated by the Old West and writing books about it. He's also fascinated by the stories of Little Bill and ends up staying behind when English Bob is banished from the city, from the town the next day. So he is sent off on a train, all bloodied and everything else. As he's actually leaving on the train, the other three ride into town. They see him bloodied on the train as they're riding into town in a storm, and they all end up going to the little saloon bar place. Ned and the kid go upstairs to meet with the ladies. Will says he doesn't agree with any of that because his wife turned him away from that, like he said. He's also got a fever, so he's not feeling well. Ned tries to get him to get a drink, to take a drink. He won't do that either because, again, he doesn't do any of that anymore because his wife turned him away from that. But they, the deputies see that they have guns as well, and Little Bill and the deputies come into the bar, and end up kind of hassling Will and taking his gun and then beating the crap out of him as well. Little Bill does, and then the other two escape and run away and hide in a barn, and they take Will with them and nurse him back to health, basically, in this barn outside of town. And at this point, you're kind of noticing that Little Bill is kind of a douche. He's not a very good person. He is the law, but it's kind of gone to his head. He thinks that just because he has the power, he can do whatever he wants. And he is the law. He even asks a couple of them, the two guys at the beginning, he says, "You don't want a trial, do you? You just want to get this over with." And they agree, and it's done with. But anyway, so you've got that going on. They believe that Will and Ned and the kid are in town for the bounty, but they don't know that. They're correct, but they don't know that for sure. And like I said, they beat Will to within pretty close to an inch of his life since he's already got a fever. Ned, the kid, and some of the women help nurse Will back to health over a few days in this barn, because Ned says that he won't do anything without Will. So after a couple days, Will's fever breaks, and they go out to find these cowboys. They find him out in a valley somewhere, and they take a shot at one of them. And Ned shoots the horse. When he tries to shoot the kid, he can't do it. He realizes that after all these years, he can't. He's grown so far out of it. He's not a killer anymore. He can't do it. And so Will takes the gun. He shoots him, even though he doesn't really want to. You can kind of tell that he doesn't. It takes him a couple shots to get it to hit the kid, and then after that, he just kind of sits there, and he lets the other ones give him some water and things like that, and he yells at him to get him some water because he's asking for help and for water because he's thirsty, and that one cowboy dies. This whole time, the kid, the Schofield kid, he's bragging this whole time, and I forgot to mention this. He's bragging about how the fact he's killed 5 people, killed 5 men, And he's going on about, well, why didn't you kill him? Why aren't you doing it? Come on, shoot him. What's going on? Why aren't you? Because he can't see anything, and these guys are a ways off, so he's freaking out about killing him. So they go through this whole thing. Well, as soon as this is over, Ned says, I'm done. I'm going back to Kansas. Done with this. Don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. Can't do it anymore. So he gives the gun to Will, rides back by himself. Will asks him to stay and wait for him. They'll all ride back together. He says, no, I'm done, and goes back by himself. On his way, he gets captured by deputies and gets brought back to Little Bill, who whips him to try to get information about the other two, and ends up killing Ned in the process. Will and the kid don't know about this. They go after the second cowboy, and because they believe that Ned has gone home, they go after the second cowboy. The kid is like, "Oh, let me kill him. I want to do it. Will's like, "Okay, I'll tell you when he comes. Tell you when he comes out of the house, and as soon as he goes into the outhouse to take a crap, I'll tell you, and you can go kill him." And as soon as he does, the kid goes, shoots him 3 times, and then Will and the kid take off with a group of people around this other cowboy, including a sheriff deputy, shooting at them on their way out of town. After that, they're sitting out waiting for their bounty. One of the women that you can see her riding out of town to bring them the money. The kid is drinking heavily out of a bottle, upset. You can clearly see that he's upset the way that he's talking, but he's kind of, he can't stop talking. He's saying like, "Oh, I can't believe, that was crazy. I can't believe that happened, da, 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 da." And he's going on, and you can see that he's upset, and he looks like he starts to cry. And then he tells Will that he has never killed anybody before. That was his first person that he'd ever killed. And Will just kind of like, yeah, he's kind of cold-blooded at this point. He's like, yeah, you can tell that he's not forgiving, but he knows what's going on. So you've got that. One of the girls comes out, brings out the money. They count it. They start counting it. And this is when the two learn, Will says they're going to go catch up with Ned. They're going to go split it with Ned. And she tells them that Ned's dead. Will says, "What do you mean Ned's dead? Ned's back in Kansas. He went back to Kansas. He didn't do anything." She's like, "No, he's dead. They killed him." I was like, "What do you mean?" Well, he learns that Little Bill killed Ned while interrogating him, beating him in interrogation. And this causes him to go back on a lot of things. This causes him to, because now his friend's dead. So he kind of reverts back to his old self. And he immediately starts drinking from this bottle of liquor that the kid had. And he informs the kid to go back to Kansas and distribute the reward to a person who's helping watch his kids, and to himself and to Ned's I think it's Ned's wife. And that night, Will goes into town by himself and finds Ned's body in a coffin in front of the saloon with a sign on it that says, "This is what happens to assassins in this town." Not happy about this, obviously, because that is his friend. Will goes into the saloon where the sheriff is gathering a posse to go after the 2 others, to find them and get them for their crimes. And Will shows up by himself, and the first person that he kills is the owner of the saloon for having Ned's body on display outside. The sheriff, Little Bill, says, well, you killed an unarmed man. You should, why'd you do that? That's an unarmed man. You're a coward. And Will says, well, he should have armed himself. And then he pulls up the gun, aims it at Little Bill, and tells everybody else to get back unless they're willing to die as well. Little Bill informs everybody to shoot him whenever he fires the one shot left in his rifle. Gun misfires, and Little Bill and his posse go on to try to shoot Will, but Will ends up killing Little Bill and 4 others in the process. Kills basically everybody in the not everybody in the room, but everybody who was planning to kill him in the room, and then scares everybody else out, including the writer, who was fascinated this whole time, and wants to learn more, and kind of is infatuated with Will until Will scares him off. At that point, Little Bill, still alive, tries to shoot Will again, or tries to come up and shoot Will again. He gets stopped, and then curses Will as Will kills him. Will then leaves, basically telling the whole town that if they do, they better take care of Ned's body, bury him with respect, and if they ever do anything like this again, he'll be back and he'll kill every one of them. And then he rides off into the storm, into the night. The next scene, you have a cut back to the same image that you had at the beginning, with the little house kind of in the background, and like a sunset over it, and text across the screen. And it says that that his wife's mother came to visit the home a few years later, or visit her daughter's final resting place a few years later, and found it abandoned. Will had up and moved with the kids, had abandoned it with the kids, and believed to have possibly moved to San Francisco, where he started working in dry goods and had made a living there. And that's the movie. Again, this was a very, very good movie. I really liked this movie. It didn't seem to take 2 hours like it did. It's a little over 2 hours, like I said. There's nothing, again, crazy that happens in it. There's not like big action sequences or anything. Like, there's a couple action sequences, but nothing over the top. It's not like a action movie. It's an old Western, so there's a lot of downtime in it, but it's done really well. And I really enjoyed this movie, and I thought it was very, very well done. Directed by Clint Eastwood. Stars Clint Eastwood again, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman. This movie was nominated for, it was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, I believe. Let me double check that. Oh no, it was nominated for way more than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards. It won 4, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. No, sorry. Won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Film Editing. It's only the 3rd Western to ever win Best Picture, so that was interesting. It made $159 million in the box office. Only cost $15 to make. And it was selected for preservation by the Library of Congress in 2004. Yeah, really good. I really enjoyed this. I think it is worth a watch for sure. If you don't like gunfight movies, then maybe not. But, it's not overly gory. You don't really, you see a little bit of blood in it, but it's not, I wouldn't call it overly gory. It is rated R, so but that's, I think, more for language and violence than it is for the actual gore. I didn't think it was super gory. A couple things that I thought was interesting when I was looking at the trivia for this. So one of the script was actually around for almost 20 years, and Gene Hackman didn't want to do it until Clint Eastwood finally persuaded him. The main theme for the movie was actually written by Clint Eastwood, which is kind of interesting, I thought. It was shot mostly in Canada, and the rain, it was dry, unusually dry at the time. So most of the rain was created during filming, but there is a scene in the snow, one scene in the snow when they're at the barn, when he's being nursed back to health, and it said that was not planned. It was unexpected. They didn't expect that. They didn't expect it to snow, so that was interesting. I kind of wondered because there was just all of a sudden this one day of snow in all the filming and no other days of snow or nothing else. So that was interesting. According to the script, the Schofield kid goes on to drown himself out of guilt, which is interesting. Yeah, that is, I think, about it. Good movie. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too if you actually watched it. If not, you should go and watch it. I think it's definitely worth, a couple hours of your time. But anyway, that's it for this week. Next week, we are talking about we're watching The Alamo. It goes along with our episode of Insufficient Friends for this week. Nikki and I are watching the 2004, 2008, whichever one, the 2000s Alamo film. So yeah, don't forget to watch that, enjoy that, come watch it, and talk and comment about that with us on the episode next week. And I will talk to you guys then.